Billionaire CEO falls for a waitress, but she's not who she claims to be. He thought he was just her brother's arrogant billionaire boss, but when he made her his fake date to win over a powerful CEO, she never expected to fall for him. Or that he'd fall harder, until the day he told her she was just a distraction. And she walked away, never knowing he was about to give up everything to bring her back. This is a story of ambition, betrayal, and a love that was never meant to happen, but couldn't be, set against the luxury of a Caribbean island and the cold boardrooms of Manhattan. Beauty and the Billionaire is the tale of Addison Burke, an overworked office manager, and Justin Ross, a ruthless CEO who's about to learn that some things like love can't be negotiated. Here until the end, to see the twist that changes everything. And if you've ever doubted love after 50, this story is for you. The first time Addison Burke met Justin Ross, she didn't even make eye contact. She was too busy filling out insurance paperwork in the back office of Dr. Morgan's clinic, her hair pulled into a messy bun, scrubs wrinkled from working a double shift. When Pete, her younger brother, and Justin's overworked assistant rushed in with a sprained ankle and a panicked expression, she barely looked up. "Another client emergency?" she muttered, flipping through forms. "The client," Pete winced, slumping into a chair. "My boss. I forgot his lunch order. Again." Addison rolled her eyes. "Then remind your billionaire boss that DoorDash exists." But that was Justin Ross, billionaire tech tycoon, CEO of Ross Global Enterprises, a man who could design the next-gen battery that would power every car in America, but couldn't seem to remember where the coffee filters were. Addison had only heard stories how demanding he was, how he treated assistants like interns and interns like servers. Pete had worked for him for 3 years, 3 exhausting, soul-grinding years. She never imagined she'd meet the man face to face. She definitely never imagined she'd be fake dating him 3 weeks later, in St. Martin, under the Caribbean sun. But that's the thing about life. It doesn't knock politely when it's about to change everything. It began with a broken leg. Pete had just left their weekly sibling lunch, Addison's only social break in a week of 60-hour work weeks, when he got hit by a courier cyclist outside the parking lot. His leg fractured, his boss livid. "He's going on a business trip to St. Martin," Pete had grunted through the pain, "and I was supposed to go with him." Addison blinked. "And now?" "He wants me there anyway, on crutches, in meetings, carrying bags." Addison crossed her arms. "You're not doing that. Will replace me if I don't." And so, Addison did something she never thought she would. She agreed to go in Pete's place, just to help, just for a week, just to keep her brother from being thrown away like an old laptop. "I'm not working for him," she told Pete firmly. "I'm just helping you work for him." But when Justin saw her, saw how efficiently she organized his schedule, how she managed his calls, smoothed over PR hiccups, charmed angry investors on his behalf, he asked her to stay. Then he asked her to be his dinner date. Not for romance, for strategy. He had a plan. Win over Katrina Sawyer, a rival CEO with a critical battery patent, by appearing charming and stable, respectable, human. "I need someone by my side who doesn't look like a hired gun," he said, not quite looking her in the eyes. "You're likable, trustworthy." Addison raised an eyebrow. "So, I'm a prop?" "You're my partner," he said carefully, temporarily. She knew it was stupid. She knew men like him didn't see women like her, not really. She was ordinary, grounded, a planner, a caretaker. But part of her, maybe the part that was tired of being invisible, wanted to know what it felt like to be seen. So she said yes. And that's when things got complicated. St. Martin wasn't a vacation. It was a test. From day one, Addison was caught in a whirlwind of board meetings, yacht dinners, investor calls. Justin worked like he was running from something, or toward it. He was demanding, arrogant, impossible, and yet sometimes human. He made her breakfast one morning, toasted her bagel just right. He remembered how she liked her coffee, cream, no sugar. He bought her a dress, not flashy, not expensive, just something in her favorite shade of blue. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked once, flustered. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "Because you're the only one who tells me the truth." Addison didn't realize she was falling for him until it was too late. It wasn't his money, it wasn't the yacht, it wasn't the fancy dinners. It was the way he listened when no one else did. The way he asked about her father, who passed 5 years ago. The way he helped Pate, awkwardly, clumsily, but with real effort. It was the moments, small, ordinary ones that felt like more. And then it shattered. They were in the middle of a tense call with Katrina when Addison offered a suggestion. One Katrina agreed with. Justin cut her off. Harsh, cold. "You don't know this business, Addison. Stay in your lane." In front of everyone. Later that night, he called it strategy. A performance. "You're not part of this," he said. "You were just here to help Pete." Just. That word. She packed her bags before sunrise. No note, no goodbye. Just a one-way flight home and a silent heart in her chest. But what Addison didn't know, what no one knew, was that Justin Ross had never let anyone in before. Not since his mother died, not since he learned the world didn't love boys who cried. And when she left, she didn't just take her suitcase. She took the one thing he didn't realize he needed. Hope. This is only the beginning. What Justin does next will cost him everything. Or give him the one thing money can't buy. Stay with us through the rest of the story, because second chances don't come twice. And some hearts are worth fighting for. Session 1. The Hurricane Meeting. The storm hit just after noon. Thunder cracked across the Miami sky like a shotgun, and the wind bent palm trees sideways along Collins Avenue. Inside the sleek glass lobby of Ross Global Headquarters, everything was still, climate-controlled, clinical. Addison Burke stood soaked at the front desk, her blouse clinging to her arms, her ID badge slightly crooked on its lanyard. She hadn't even planned on being here. She was supposed to be home, filling out medication inventories and rescheduling diabetic foot exams. But Pete had begged her. "Addie, please. I just need you to drop off this folder. I left it on the counter this morning. I'm dead if it doesn't get to Justin by 2. She was about to say no, about to tell him to call an Uber. But then she remembered how pale he looked when the doctor reset his leg last week, how guilty he felt, missing even one meeting. So she grabbed the folder and ran into the storm. Now she stood, dripping and irritated, in a building where everyone else looked like they'd been styled by Vogue and pressed by NASA. "Can I help you?" the front desk associate asked, barely glancing up. "I'm here to drop something for Mr. Ross. Pete Burke is his assistant. He asked me to deliver it." "You're not on the list," the woman said. Addison pushed her wet hair back and took a deep breath. "I'm not trying to see him. I just need someone to take this folder upstairs." Before she could finish, the elevator behind the desk dinged open. 2 men in tailored charcoal suits stepped out, deep in discussion. One of them was Justin Ross. She knew it instantly, not because of the articles or the Forbes cover that Pete kept framed above his desk, but because of the aura. He moved like someone who expected the world to rearrange itself in his path. Tall, dark-haired eyes like winter frost, and that look, a blend of calculation and mild disapproval, like he was always 5 moves ahead and already tired of your excuses. He noticed her instant. His gaze swept over her wet blouse, the manila folder clutched to her chest, and the receptionist trying very hard not to be involved. "We know her?" he asked flatly. "She's here for Pete Burke," the woman said. "Pete's at physio." "I'm his sister," Addison cut in. "He asked me to bring this." Justin studied her for a long beat. Then, shockingly, he walked toward her. He didn't take the folder. Instead, he took her in. "Addison Burke," he said slowly, "you manage Dr. Morgan's office on 6th Street. Her brows rose. "How do you know that?" "Pete talks, mostly when he's trying not to cry over Excel formulas." He gestured for her to follow him. "Come upstairs." She blinked. "What?" "I don't like standing in lobbies. and you're dripping on our Italian marble." The elevator was silent. Justin didn't look at her again until the doors closed. "I appreciate you helping your brother," he said. "He's not half bad for someone who panics over sandwich orders. He broke his leg delivering your dry cleaning." Justin's jaw flexed. "He told you that?" "Pete doesn't lie. It's kind of his thing." Justin gave a humorless smile. "In this building, that's a disability." She smirked despite herself. The elevator opened to a private floor. Walnut floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, art that cost more than her car. He walked her to a glass-walled conference room. "Wait here," he said. "Don't touch anything, especially the sculpture. It's not as solid as it looks." Then he disappeared down the hall. Addison stood awkwardly, arms crossed, unsure if she'd been detained or honored. What was she doing here? This was Pete's world. Suits, high-rises, people who said synergy with a straight face. She was from a world of flu vaccines, missed appointments, and moms who forgot insurance cards. Then Justin returned with a coffee. "Soy milk? 1 sugar," he said, handing it to her. "That's how Pete said you take it." Addison stared at him. "You made this?" "I own the building. I can make a coffee." She sipped. It was perfect. "I thought billionaires had assistants for that." "I fired the last one. She spelled my name wrong on a holiday card." Addison raised an eyebrow. "That's totally reasonable." Justin didn't smile, but something flickered. "Sit," he said. "I want to ask you something." She hesitated, but obeyed. "You've run Dr. Morgan's office for what?" "It runs like clockwork. To most days." "Why haven't you left?" Addison blinked. "Excuse me?" "To your organizational skill, your people instinct. You could be running logistics at any Fortune 500, yet you're still printing intake forms and fielding angry calls from insurance companies." Addison stiffened. "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" "It's an observation. You're overqualified. Or maybe I believe in what I do." Justin's eyes narrowed. "Do you know how rare that is?" She stood. "Look, I only came to drop off a folder, so if you're done psychoanalyzing me—" "I'm going to St. Martin tomorrow," he interrupted. She stopped. "What?" "My assistant is on crutches, but this trip matters. I need someone who can manage my schedule, keep me sane, and not embarrass me at diplomatic dinners." She blinked again. "You're kidding." "Walk with me," he said simply. "Just for a week." She stared at him like he'd grown antlers. "You want me to drop everything, fly to a tropical island and pretend to be your assistant? You already pretend to like your real job." She opened her mouth, closed it. "Why me?" He was quiet for a long beat. "Because you don't need me," he said quietly, "which means I might actually listen to you." That night, Addison stood in front of her bathroom mirror, a towel wrapped around her hair, the offer still echoing. "You don't need me." It wasn't romantic, it wasn't flattering, but it was honest. And somehow, it cut deeper than any love letter. She turned out the light. The answer would come with the sunrise, and nothing in her life would ever be the same. Mission 2. Help and a new beginning. The jet was quiet. Addison sat by the window, watching the clouds roll beneath them like a sea of cotton and silence. The leather seat beneath her felt too luxurious, too permanent, like it belonged to someone else's life. Across the aisle, Justin Ross barely looked up from his tablet. He hadn't said more than a few words since they boarded. And she wasn't surprised. He was the kind of man who didn't talk unless it was necessary, and even then it felt like a negotiation. Her fingers traced the condensation on the champagne flute she hadn't touched. First class was one thing, but this was a different universe. Private jet, no TSA, no crying babies, just silence, silk, and the scent of cedarwood cologne that clung to him like armor. What am I doing here? She'd asked herself that question 100 times since yesterday. When Pete called her, stunned that Justin wanted her, Addison had laughed. And then she said yes. Not because she was starstruck, not even for Pete, though he'd begged her not to say no. She said yes because something in Justin's voice, quiet, weary, a little too honest, had reminded her of herself, of someone trying not to break. And maybe, just maybe, she was tired of her life fitting in a box so small even her heart couldn't breathe inside it. St. Martin was drenched in sun when they landed. A black SUV was waiting. The air was thick with salt and gardenia. Justin barely acknowledged the driver as they pulled away from the tarmac. Addison stared out the window, the tropics rushing past like a dream she didn't belong in. "You'll be staying in the guest wing," he said suddenly. She turned. "Dear staff, if you need anything. But I prefer quiet, no noise, no drama, no surprises." She smiled. "So, I'll try not to exist?" He glanced at her, and for the first time, his mouth twitched at the edge. Exactly. The villa wasn't a house, it was a statement. Auburn lines, infinity pools, marble that gleamed like water. Her guest room was larger than her apartment. The bed looked like it could host a summit. The ocean view punched her breath from her lungs. She unpacked in silence. There was something surreal about folding thrift store sundresses into a walk-in closet lined with designer suits. Something absurd about her $10.00 CVS sunscreen next to a jar of La Mer. She didn't belong here. But she was here anyway. Dinner was at 7. She didn't expect to see Justin. She figured he'd order in, hole up in some conference call with a Middle Eastern investor, and forget she existed. So when she stepped into the dining room and found him already seated, reading, barefoot, hair damp from the pool, she froze. He didn't look up. "Hope you're hungry," he said. Addison blinked. "You're not having dinner with a Saudi prince or something?" "Tonight?" She sat, cautious. Dinner was grilled snapper, mango salad, and something green that looked fancy enough to be terrifying. She barely touched the wine. Justin didn't talk much, but when he did, it wasn't about the market. It was about the waves, the wind. A strange calm he only found when he wasn't surrounded by skyscrapers and sycophants. "I used to come here alone," he said, barely above a murmur. "But lately, being alone doesn't feel the same." Addison said nothing. Not because she didn't want to, but because that sentence, "being alone doesn't feel the same," had cracked something in her. She knew that ache too well. By the third day, she had found her rhythm. Wake early, prep his calls, filter his emails, remind him gently that he was being too short with Pete or too dismissive in meetings. She wasn't just helping. She was stabilizing. And she made sure he ate, rested, breathed, and strangely, he let her. He wasn't warm, but he wasn't cold either. He was tired, guarded. But with her, something softened. He saw it when he offered her the last croissant at breakfast. When he told her to sit in on a call with a foreign diplomat, just to hear what you think. And he started asking questions about her life and didn't interrupt the answers. But then came the pool scene. It was a Wednesday afternoon. She had just finished uploading a revised itinerary and came out to find him on a lounge chair, shirt off, towel across his hips, eyes closed. She hesitated, turned to leave. Then, "You're not going to swim?" His voice was lazy, low. She froze. "I don't really, it's not my thing." "You came to the Caribbean to wear slacks and answer emails." She turned. "I came to help you." "You've done that. Now do something for yourself." She rolled her eyes. "You don't even know me." He opened one eye. I know you take care of everyone but yourself. I know you live like life's a waiting room." Her mouth parted slightly. "That's not fair." "It's not meant to be." She stared at him. And then, surprising herself, she laughed. "I don't own a swimsuit." He tilted his head. "Then swim in your clothes." She did. 10 minutes later, she dove into the bluest water she'd ever seen. Cotton t-shirt, leggings, and all. And she felt ridiculous. And alive. When she surfaced, Justin was watching her. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, yes, but something else too. Something like longing. She floated on her back. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about missed bills, prescriptions, or whether Pete was pushing himself too hard. She just floated. And in that quiet, somewhere between sky and sea, she felt something else float to the surface too. Hope. That night, after dinner, she found a note slid under her door. It was written on thick stationery, with perfect ink. "You bring a piece I forgot I needed. Thank you, Jay." No signature, no flourish. Just truth. Addison stood at the balcony, wind in her hair, note in her hand. She didn't know what this was, but she knew it wasn't nothing. And in her heart, for the first time in a very long time, and she felt like she was beginning again. Mission 3. Sparks of Hope and First Obstacle. The sun over St. Martin was different now. It wasn't just a backdrop. It had color, warmth, meaning. Addison woke up early, earlier than usual, not out of habit, but something lighter, like her body remembered what peace felt like and didn't want to waste it. She stepped onto the terrace in her robe, barefoot, coffee in hand, and watched the world wake up. Waves rolled slow, palms danced, the sea whispered secrets no one else could hear. And for once, her heart wasn't racing. Her mind wasn't ticking off to-do lists. It was just quiet. Until morning. She turned sharply. Justin was already on the lower deck, barefoot too, dress shirt untucked, sleeves rolled, staring at the ocean like he was seeing it for the first time. She offered a half smile. "Don't you have a crisis to manage?" He shrugged. "There's always a crisis. This morning I decided not to care." She paused. "That's unlike you." He looked up. "Maybe you're a bad influence." Later that day, she found a package on the dining table addressed to her. Inside, a one-piece navy blue swimsuit, a pair of designer sunglasses, and a note. "Wear this. You deserve to feel beautiful." Her breath caught. Not because of the gift, but because of the "you deserve to feel beautiful." She hadn't heard those words in years. Not since her mother's last voicemail. Not since everything broke. She clutched the note to her chest and for a moment fought the tears clawing at the corners of her strength. No man had ever seen through her armor like that. Not even the one who claimed to love her once. That afternoon, they swam again. This time, she laughed more. He did too. They raced. He let her win. She pretended not to notice. They shared stories, not of business, but childhood. He told her about growing up in a cramped apartment in Queens, selling golf balls from the edge of a public course. She told him about her father's old truck that broke down every winter, and how she learned to change a tire at 13 because no one else could. "You're stronger than you look," he said quietly. She replied, "You're softer than you act." And neither of them denied it. But then, like every fairy tale that dares to feel real, came the first crack. It began with a phone call. Addison was in the study, organizing Justin's schedule, when Pete's voice came through tight, low, nervous. "Addie, there's something you need to know." She closed the door. "What's wrong?" "I overheard something on the last call with the board. Justin, he might be orchestrating a quiet acquisition of Katrina Sawyer's company behind her back." Addison froze. "But he said he wanted to talk to her, work something out, not force anything." "I thought so too. But there's talk, pressure from investors, legal angles. He's playing it close, but he's definitely moving pieces." Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just business. This was betrayal. Not just to Katrina, who had started to trust her. To her Addison. The woman he had opened up to, laughed with, written notes to in elegant ink. The woman he was starting to feel something for. And she hung up. And suddenly, the villa felt colder. That evening, over dinner, she didn't say much. Justin noticed. "You're quiet." "I'm tired." Nor not. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something almost tender. "What is it?" She looked at him then. Really looked. This man who had made her feel seen, wanted, safe. And for the first time, she couldn't recognize him. "Tell me you're not trying to take Katrina's company without her knowing," she said flatly. His jaw tightened, just enough to be noticeable. "Where did you hear that?" "It's true." He didn't answer. Addison's heart sank. "You told me you were different now, that this trip wasn't about destroying someone's career again." "It's not?" "Then why the backdoor moves? Why not talk to her like a man instead of a machine?" His eyes hardened. "You don't understand what's at stake." "Try me." "Company, thousands of jobs, a battery division that could change the entire industry. I'm not going to wait for her to come around if someone else will snatch it first." Addison stood, her chair scraping behind her. "What about people, Justin? What about what she wants? Or what you said, I mean, to you?" He stood too. "This isn't about us." She laughed bitterly. "It never is with men like you. It's always about power." "Addison, I believed you were different. I let myself hope. That was my mistake." And she walked out, tears hot, chest aching. Behind her, for the first time in days, Justin didn't follow. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay on the wide, cold bed, replaying every word, every glance, every moment that had felt real, and wondering which part had been a lie. Maybe all of it. Maybe none. But it didn't matter now. She had crossed a line. And maybe she'd been foolish to think a man like Justin Ross could ever truly see her. Not just as a woman who brought him peace, but as a person with lines he shouldn't cross. The next morning, she had her suitcase packed by sunrise. Pete begged her to stay. Even Justin knocked once on her door, then left. No argument. No grand gesture. Just silence. And it hurt more than any angry word could. Because it meant he didn't know how to fix it. Or didn't want to. She slipped the navy blue swimsuit into her bag, folded the note gently, and tucked it away. And with one last look at the villa, the sea, the sky, the moments that could be, she walked away. Mission 4. Misunderstanding and inner conflict. The sound of Addison's suitcase wheels dragging across the tiles still echoed in Justin's head. He hadn't slept. Not because he was working late, not because there was a deal to close, but because she left and he had let her. Again, his whole life had been about control, anticipation, getting ahead of problems before they became real. But he hadn't seen this coming. Or worse, he had caused it. Pete limped into the kitchen just after sunrise, clutching a coffee mug and eyeing Justin warily. "She's gone," Justin said without turning around. Pete nodded. "Yeah, I know." Silence settled between them, the kind that throbbed like a wound too fresh to touch. Justin finally spoke. "Do you think she'll come back?" "It depends," Pete said gently. "Are you planning to keep being the guy she left?" Justin flinched. "She was never just a distraction, Pete. She made me better. For the first time, I didn't feel like a damn machine." "Then why'd you treat her like a pawn?" "I didn't mean to." "You didn't stop yourself either." That landed hard. Justin sat down, rubbed his temples. "I wanted the deal with Katrina so bad. I wanted to win, but I never wanted to lose her." Pete leaned against the counter. "The problem is, you can't have both if you're going to keep playing dirty." Meanwhile, Addison sat at the small airport cafe, staring out the window at the runway. And she could still hear the way Justin's voice shifted when she accused him. Not hurt, not apologetic. Defensive. Just like her ex-fiancé had been. He'd once promised her forever, until the promotion he wanted needed a single man. And just like that, her dreams were deemed disposable. Addison had sworn to never let another man put her second to ambition. And now here she was, falling for a billionaire who couldn't tell the difference between loyalty and leverage. Her phone buzzed. From Katrina Sawyer. Still on the island? Annie keeps asking if you'll come to the beach today. No pressure, just letting you know you're welcome. Addison smiled, just a little. A child's kindness always managed to pierce her walls. Maybe she'd delay her flight. One more day wouldn't hurt. Back at the villa, Justin paced the study, every muscle coiled. He picked up his phone, and then put it down again. He had no idea what to say. He'd faced Fortune 500 boards, survived shareholder mutinies, outnegotiated billionaires twice his age. But one woman with a heart too big and a past too real, had unraveled every blueprint he'd ever built. He opened her last email again. I thought you were different. Maybe I was wrong, but I hope, for your sake, that someday you'll want to be. He whispered to himself. I do. But wanting it wasn't the same as earning it. Later that day, Addison sat by the beach with Katrina and Annie. The sun warmed her skin, but her heart still carried frost. Are you okay? Katrina asked, handing her a bottle of water. I don't know, Addison replied honestly. I thought I was helping my brother. Somehow, I ended up getting hurt. Katrina looked out at the waves. Justin has that effect on people. His power, it seduces you, and then disappoints you. Addison frowned. He wasn't always like this, was he? No, Katrina said softly. He used to believe in building things. Now he just buys and sells them. Addison turned the words over like stones in her mind. What if Justin did want to be different, but just didn't know how anymore? And what if, just maybe, she was the first person who dared to call him out? Not out of spite, but because she saw something better in him. Can I ask you something personal? Addison said, hesitating. Katrina nodded. Do you think people like him ever really change? Katrina paused. I think if someone makes them want to. Back at the villa, Justin sat on the patio, rereading an old chapter of his own book, one he'd written in a better time. Success without humanity is just hollow wealth. He scoffed. What a lie. He had built everything on that principle and abandoned it somewhere along the way. A rustle of paper snapped him out of thought. Pete stood nearby, holding a single envelope. What's that? Justin asked. Addison left this. Justin grabbed it, fingers trembling. Inside, a note in her slanted handwriting. If you ever learn to put people first, I hope I'm still around to see it. The words hit harder than any press scandal, any deal gone wrong, because this wasn't a threat. It was a plea, and he'd ignored it. Until now. The next day, Addison packed again, but this time slower. She still hadn't decided whether she was leaving for good. The world was pulling her in two directions: dignity and longing, pride and hope. Her brother was stable now. Katrina didn't need her help. The work she left behind at the clinic could resume. And yet, every memory of Justin that lingered wasn't about money. It was how he made breakfast after she snapped at him. How he asked about her childhood without an agenda. How he sat in silence with her when her emotions were too heavy to speak. There was something under that expensive suit, behind that billion-dollar bravado. Something broken. Something human. Something worth saving, if he wanted to be saved. Just before her taxi arrived, her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, answered. Addison, it's me. Justin's voice. Softer, strained. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not calling for that. She said nothing. I'm calling to say, I heard you. Maybe not when you needed me to, but I'm listening now. Still silence. I'm meeting Katrina again, not to negotiate, just to listen. And I'm scrapping the acquisition. The board's already furious. I don't care. I pause. I care more about the woman who looked me in the eyes and said I could be better than I care about the men who only want me richer. Addison swallowed the lump in her throat. He wasn't lonesome, looked at me. He wasn't manipulating. He was real. I'm not asking you to come back, Justin continued. I just wanted you to know I'm not letting the last thing you said to me be the truth. The line clicked. And Addison stood there, trembling, heart torn wide open. Mission 5. Collaboration and the first major test. Building with broken pieces. Addison didn't respond to Justin's call. Not that day. Not the next. But she also didn't leave. Something inside her told her to wait. Not out of weakness, but because something was changing. Not just in him. In her too. And when her phone buzzed again, it wasn't a call. It was a forwarded email from Pete. Subject: partnership proposal. I'm Justin Ross. And to Katrina Sawyer. Let's build something. Together. No takeovers, no dismantling. Your vision leads, mine supports. You stare. I power. I'm done pretending I know better. I want to know what matters to you, and I want to back it. Not earn it. She read it twice. Then again. And that was enough for her to show up at the meeting. Not for Justin. For the idea. For the possibility that people can rebuild. Katrina stood outside the beachfront cafe, arms folded. She glanced at Addison as she arrived. You sure about this? She asked. Addison smiled faintly. Not at all. Good, that means you're thinking. Inside, Justin sat alone at a table, a folder in front of him. His usual confident posture had softened. Less CEO, more man. He stood when they entered, his eyes meeting Addison's first. No smile. Just gratitude. She nodded, and they sat. Katrina opened the folder. She flipped through the pages slowly. Addison watched her face for signs. Frowns, raised brows, a sigh. But Katrina said nothing for 5 full minutes. But then, quietly, you actually listened. Justin gave a single nod. I did. Addison didn't speak. She let the silence sit between them. It wasn't awkward. It was earned. Katrina finally closed the folder and said, This could work, but not if you treat me like a vendor. Justin leaned in. You won't be. You'll be the partner. And what about her? Katrina motioned to Addison. Is she another executive now, or just the emotional support? Addison bristled, but Justin spoke first. She's the reason I still have a shot at fixing any of this. Addison blinked. That wasn't rehearsed. That wasn't flattering. That was truth. Katrina narrowed her eyes. Then you'd better start proving it. 2 days later, the 3 of them sat in a war room inside Justin's temporary villa. Post-it notes plastered the walls. Charts, spreadsheets, maps, projection. Katrina had brought her lead engineer on Zoom. Justin had brought his financial analyst. Addison had brought structure. She reorganized the chaos, translated engineering jargon into actionable strategies, reframed PR nightmares into brand revival opportunities. And when Pete hobbled in mid-meeting with updates, Justin waved him off and turned to Addison. What do you think? She looked up, caught off guard. You're the only one here who isn't trying to impress anyone. Everyone waited. And Addison, feeling her hands tremble, spoke clearly. I think, if you rush this, the media will call it damage control, but if you slow down and frame it as innovation born from humility, you might just make history. Silence. Then Katrina nodded. She's right. Justin didn't say thank you. But he turned back to the screen and said, We do it Addison's way. Later that night, Addison stood on the balcony overlooking the sea. The stars were impossibly clear. Justin joined her, 2 glasses in hand. Don't worry, he said. It's just ginger ale. She smiled. You think I'm judging? I think I'm trying not to screw up the one thing I haven't bought. Addison took the glass. I saw the way you looked at those projections today. He sipped. I was chasing a second chance. She turned to face him. Is that what this is? A second chance? He hesitated. It's the first time I'm trying to do it right. Their eyes locked. And for once, neither tried to fill the silence. The next morning, the storm hit. Not from the sky, but from the boardroom. Justin's phone exploded with calls. News had leaked that he was no longer pursuing full acquisition of Sawyer Energy, and investors weren't happy. Stocks trembled. An emergency shareholder meeting was scheduled within 24 hours. Justin stood at the head of the villa's dining room, now a makeshift crisis hub. His legal team on one end, PR advisors on the other. But it was Addison he looked at. Tell me I didn't just tank my entire empire. She didn't blink. You didn't. He exhaled. But Katrina was less calm. Your people are spinning this as weakness? I'll change the narrative, Justin said. They want a shark. Are you believing that? Addison asked. Justin paused, then nodded. I believe in the people in this room, and I believe in rebuilding from the rubble. Addison whispered, then go prove it. That night, Addison helped Pete draft Justin's talking points. Katrina edited the pitch deck, and Justin rehearsed. No bravado, just truth. At 9 a.m. the next morning, he stood in front of a virtual wall of shareholders and said, what we do next determines if we stay relevant or if we become relics. For years I operated on conquest. Now I choose collaboration. This is not about ego, it's about evolution. If we can't embrace innovation born from humility, then we don't deserve the future. When he finished, silence followed. Then, one by one, hands went up. Not to object, but to agree. The motion passed. The partnership with Katrina was greenlit. The storm had not only passed, it had cleared the sky. That evening, the villa was quiet. Everyone had dispersed. But Addison lingered in the living room, watching the fire flicker low. Justin walked in, and no suit, no mask. Just a man who had fought for something more than power. For the first time. I didn't thank you, he said. You don't need to, she replied. But I do, because I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't called me out. She met his eyes. Probably richer, but a lot more alone. He smiled. Can I show you something? She nodded. He led her to the study, where a glass frame sat on the desk. Inside it, her note. If you ever learn to put people first, I hope I'm still around to see it. I read this every morning, he said. Addison swallowed hard. Then maybe you'll keep earning that second chance, she whispered. He stepped closer. I'd like to spend every day doing exactly that. And for the first time, she didn't walk away. She stayed. Mission 6. Twist. The secret from her past. They say the past is a place you visit but never live in. But sometimes, it comes looking for you. And for Addison Burke, it arrived in a plain white envelope, left on the villa doorstep. No name, no return address, only her. And when she opened it, her hands began to shake before she finished the first sentence. Because it wasn't just a secret. It was her entire past laid bare. One that Justin Ross could never forgive. Addison sat alone on the edge of her bed, the letter in her lap. Her eyes darted over the words again. You thought you could hide it forever. But secrets don't stay buried, especially not when they were bought with someone else's life. She didn't have to guess who sent it. The handwriting belonged to a ghost she had hoped would never find her here. Her breath trembled. The villa walls felt like they were closing in. and just as she tried to stand, Justin's voice called softly from down the hall. "Addison, you okay?" She crumpled the letter into her fist. "Yeah, just give me a minute." She could feel the weight of every word. Not from the letter, from the lie she never told him. Later that night, she sat across from him in the study. Her smile was too forced, her eyes too distant. Justin noticed, but said nothing. He had learned, some things can't be pulled, they have to be given. And so he waited, until she finally said, "Do you ever wish you could go back?" When? The moment before it all changed. Before the money, before the power. He thought a moment. No, because back then, I didn't know what I do now. About people, about consequences, about myself. She looked down. And what if you found out the person you trusted wasn't who you thought? His voice was steady. Then I'd want to understand why. Addison nodded slowly, but didn't speak. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. The next day, Addison slipped away from the villa. No calls. No texts. No note. Just space. She drove an old rental into the small town, down a winding road she hadn't seen in years. Till she reached it. A Claire Women's Shelter. The building looked the same, blue shutters, faded paint, and the oak tree still leaned over the front gate like it was protecting every soul inside. She sat in the car for 10 minutes before she walked in. Inside, the woman at the desk looked up and smiled. "Addie?" Addison smiled faintly. "Hi, Marla." The older woman stood and hugged her tightly. "Lord, I never thought I'd see you again. How long's it been?" 7 years. "When you're back, because..." Addison swallowed. "I think my past is about to catch up with me." Marla's face turned serious. "Is it him?" Addison nodded. Marla didn't need to ask which him. Only one man had ever made Addison disappear. Back at the villa, Justin paced. Pete entered with a half-eaten sandwich in hand. "Relax, she probably just needed a walk. It's been gone for hours. Maybe she's clearing her head. You ever try that?" "I cleared my entire company last year. Didn't help." Pete sighed and sat down. "You're scared." Justin turned. "Of what?" You care more than you planned." Justin didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because just then, his assistant walked in, holding a manila folder. "Sir, this arrived for you." There's no name, no return address. Inside, a scanned copy of a juvenile court record. Name Addison Burke. Offense: fraudulent identity. Status: expunged. Teal: restricted. Justin stared at it in disbelief. No accusations, just facts. Facts Addison had never shared. His stomach turned. But he didn't call her. Not yet. At the shelter, Addison sat across from Marla in the tiny office, the clock ticking softly in the background. "I was 18, barely," Addison said. "He was charming, rich, controlling. He said he loved me, but what he loved was owning me. You were just a girl. I helped him set up accounts, wire transfers. I didn't even know what I was signing, and when the feds came, he vanished. We left you holding the blame." Addison nodded. "I took a plea, juvenile court, time served in a halfway house." Marla reached across and held her hand. "You were a victim, not a criminal. Try telling that to a man like Justin Ross." Marla's eyes narrowed. "Maybe he deserves the truth anyway. I don't want to lose what we've built." "Then you're already losing it, because trust without truth is just performance." That night, Addison returned to the villa. Her key still worked, but the air had shifted. Justin sat in the study, the manila folder open in front of him. Addison froze. Their eyes locked. He didn't speak. She did. "You found it." "I did." A long pause. Then he asked, "Were you ever going to tell me?" "I wanted to. I was waiting for the right time." "There's never a right time for a lie." She stepped closer. "It wasn't a lie. It was a wound. One I didn't know how to show you." He stood slowly. His eyes weren't angry, just betrayed. "You trust me?" I do." "Then why didn't you trust me with this?" "Because I thought if you saw the worst part of me, you'd walk away." Justin looked down, then back at her. "I've done worse than most men ever admit, but I never used someone the way he used you." Silence. Then softer. "You're not that scared girl anymore, so why are you still hiding from the truth?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't think I was good enough to stand next to you." He stepped closer. "You're the only one who's ever made me want to be better." The next morning, he released a company memo, a formal partnership with Sawyer Technologies. But that wasn't the surprise. The surprise was the last paragraph. "It's not weakness to acknowledge the past. It's the foundation of wisdom. And sometimes the strongest partnerships are forged, not from power, but from forgiveness." The media didn't know what to make of it. Well, Addison did. And when he found her that evening, sitting on the beach, barefoot in the sand, he didn't speak. He just sat beside her. No questions, no conditions, only presence, only trust, the kind that survives secrets. Because now, they had none. Session 7, the breaking point. They say trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. And that night, it shattered in just one sentence. The candlelight dinner had been Justin's idea. After everything, Addison's confession, the partnership with Katrina, the unexpected truce, he wanted to show her that things were different now. They were on the same team. It was soft jazz and sea breeze, handwritten menus, even a table set up on the private terrace under the stars. Justin poured the wine. Addison smiled, nervously but honestly, until her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Her face went white. Unknown number. One message. He deserved to know the truth about Chicago, or I will tell him myself. Her chest tightened. Justin noticed immediately. Something wrong? She locked the screen, forced to smile. "It's nothing." But her voice cracked on the word. Justin's smile faded. "Addison, please," she said, "let's not ruin tonight." And it already had been. Because secrets never stay buried. And this one was still bleeding. The next morning, Addison drove into town, alone. She needed to think, needed space. What she didn't know was that someone was already moving behind the scenes. Because Derek Shaw, her ex, the man behind the Chicago mess, was in St. Martin. And he had plans. Justin's assistant, Pete, didn't notice anything unusual at first when he came back from the market. He passed a man at the gates in a crisp suit holding a small black envelope. Delivery from Mr. Ross. Pete took it, opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Allison. Derek, and an embrace. Temp in the corner. 3 months before she ever met Justin. And a line of text written in sharp ink. "You're not her first billionaire." Pete's throat went dry. He knew Justin well enough to know what this would look like. So he rushed to the study. Justin stared at the photo. And for the first time in weeks, the cold mask, not the man who smiled beside Addison at sunset. This was the CEO, the one who had been burned before. Pete tried to reason. "Justin, it could be old. It might not mean anything." "Or it could mean everything," Justin said. "You've changed. Don't let this drag you back." But Justin wasn't listening anymore. Because betrayal wasn't new to him. It was just familiar enough to hurt. Addison returned that evening. The villa was quiet. Too quiet. She walked into the study and found him standing by the fireplace, with the photo in his hand. And her eyes dropped instantly. "You found it." He turned. "How long were you going to keep this from me?" She stepped forward, hands trembling. "Justin, it's not what it looks like." "Really?" His voice cut like a blade. "Because it looks like you used to be with him. And he's not just anybody. He's Derek Shaw." She nodded slowly. "Yes. But it was over long before I met you." "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was ashamed. Because I knew how it would look." "So you let me fall for a woman who lied from the very beginning?" She shook her head. "I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything." "The same thing." "No," she whispered. "It's not. Not when you're scared someone will judge you for a past you never asked for." He stepped closer. "Did you come here for me or for some kind of payout?" That cut deep. Addison's face went pale. "Then you think I'm that woman?" "I think I don't know who you are anymore." Tears welled in her eyes. "Then maybe I should go." Silence. Bent in unknowing. "I think that would be best." Addison packed quietly. Pete found her in the hallway, suitcase half-zipped. "Please don't do this," he said. "He's hurt, but he's wrong." "I'm not angry," she said, folding the last of her clothes. "Just tired." "Of what?" "Of always having to prove I'm more than my mistakes." Pete hesitated, then reached into his pocket, handed her a second photo. It was a wide shot of that same image, but zoomed out. And in that frame, you could see Derek pulling her in against her will. Addison blinked. "I didn't know this existed." "It came in the same envelope," Pete said. "I didn't give it to Justin." "Why not?" "Because if he really trusts you, he needs to ask, not assume." She didn't say goodbye to Justin. Just left her key on the counter and walked away from the life they had begun to build. Not with anger, but with heartbreak. Back in the villa, Justin stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the wine glasses they never got to use. And then he noticed the second envelope, still sealed, lying on the counter. He opened it and saw the full truth. Not betrayal, but in protection. Not deception, and sacrifice. He sank into the chair, the weight of his mistake crashing down like a tidal wave. And for the first time in a long time, Justin Ross felt. In a small apartment above a flower shop downtown, Addison stared out at the ocean, trying not to cry, trying to remind herself she had survived worse. But knowing, this one hurt more than all the rest. Because this time, it had been real. And she had lost it. To fear. To silence. To the one thing she thought she could outrun her past. Mission 8. Role reversal. Rescue. Addison thought she'd left it all behind. The whispers, the assumptions, the pain of loving a man who didn't trust her. But sometimes the past doesn't stay gone. Sometimes it follows you home. 3 weeks had passed since she left St. Martin. She was back in Boston. Ordinary life, ordinary days. Dr. Morgan welcomed her back with open arms. The front desk needed her, the patients remembered her. But her heart hadn't come with her. Because every night she still heard his voice in her mind. "I don't know who you are anymore." And every time, it broke her all over again. Then came the headline. Distinguished hospitalized after private jet incident. She dropped her coffee. The mug shattered. Her heart nearly did too. The article was brief, details scarce. A pressurized cabin failure, emergency landing, minor injuries reported. But Justin Ross was among them. Addison didn't hesitate, and she booked the next flight. When she arrived in New York, the hospital lights glared like interrogation lamps. She walked in, hands trembling. The nurse at the front desk paused. Or are your aunt and aunt, little sister? Addison Burke. I'm here for Justin Ross. Please. The nurse scanned her, then nodded slowly. We's awake, room 928. Addison moved fast, like her soul had snapped awake. She didn't know what she'd say. Didn't know if he'd even want to see her. But she had to see him. Had to know he was okay. The door creaked open. He sat propped against the pillows, a light bandage on his temple. His eyes widened when he saw her. Addison? She froze in the doorway. I heard about the jet, she said quietly. I just needed to make sure you were... He swung his legs off the bed, winced a little. I'm okay, he said, mostly bruised pride. She nodded, didn't move. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think I would either. Silence stretched between them, heavy, loaded. I read the rest of the... he finally said. The full photo, the truth. She looked down. You were protecting yourself from a man who manipulated you, he continued. And I was too blind to see it. You didn't want to see it, she said, voice low. I know. He took a breath. I was wrong, Addison. About everything. I let my fear ruin the best thing that ever happened to me. She swallowed hard. You said you didn't know who I was anymore. He stepped closer. I know now. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small object. It was a folded origami flower. Wrinkled, torn, like it had lived in his jacket for weeks. I kept it. The one you made for Annie, he said. It reminded me that something beautiful doesn't have to be perfect. Addison's lip trembled. You don't have to forgive me now, but I need you to know, I never stopped hoping you'd walk through that door. Her eyes filled with tears. You hurt me, she whispered, more than anyone else ever has. I know, he said, and I hate myself for it. But you're not the only one who was scared. And it stopped him. Addison took a step forward. I've been running for years, from Chicago, from my past, from trusting anyone too much. She looked at him. Then you showed up, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could stop. Justin swallowed. You can. Becton, can I? He nodded slowly. With me? You can. And for the first time since the night everything fell apart, she let herself believe it. She took his hand and didn't let go. But fate wasn't finished with them yet, because a storm was brewing. And this time, it wasn't just emotional. It was corporate. Back at Justin's firm, Katrina Sawyer was under attack. Someone had leaked confidential documents about their battery merger and twisted the narrative. The media painted it as a hostile takeover. Stock prices plummeted overnight. Katrina called Justin from her office. Did you leak it? I just got out of the hospital, he said. Why would I sabotage my own deal? There's a traitor somewhere, she snapped. And if we don't get ahead of it, this partnership is going down with both of us. I'll handle it, Justin said. You better, or this entire future you promised her will vanish. Addison watched him hang up. His jaw was clenched, shoulders tense. Someone on the inside? She asked. He nodded. Only someone close would have had access to those projections. He looked at her. I need help. She blinked. Me? You ran a medical practice more efficiently than my entire PR team. I need someone I can trust, someone who sees the angles I don't. I'm not a corporate spy, Justin. No, you're better. You see people. She hesitated, then nodded. Let's find your traitor. Together, they pored over emails, board meeting minutes, internal memos. It was Addison who spotted it. An inconsistency in one of the legal drafts. Clause that wasn't there 2 days ago. The author? Duncan, Justin's longtime legal aide. The same man who had once tried to court Katrina for a private deal behind Justin's back. It all clicked. Selling insider info to your competitors, Addison said. Trying to sink your deal so he can broker a new one with Katrina's rivals. Justin stared at the screen. And for once, didn't explode. He just leaned back. Then I guess we know what we're up against. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind. Legal team engaged. Media spin handled. And a personal meeting with Katrina and her board. But what made the difference wasn't strategy. It was Addison, who stood before the board and told them why she believed in Justin. Not because he was a billionaire, but because he had learned how to listen, how to fight for the right reasons, how to change. And when it was over, the room voted in favor of the partnership. Sentimentally. That night, Justin and Addison walked the empty corridors of his office. Everything felt still. She turned to him. "You okay?" He nodded. "For once, yeah." "You were willing to lose everything." He looked at her. Not everything, just what didn't matter. "What up?" He stepped closer. "You." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a ring box. Her breath caught. "Are you?" "Asking," he said, "not proposing. Yet." She laughed through the tears. "I know. Because for the first time, I know what it means to be saved." He took her hand. "I wasn't me who did the saving. Mention 9. Clearing the past and new promises." The city skyline glowed behind them. Justin's penthouse, once a fortress of glass, steel, and solitude, felt warmer now. Addison leaned against the balcony rail, a cup of tea in hand. She watched the wind toy with the hem of her sweater. Inside, Justin was on the phone, wrapping up a late call with Katrina's board. Final details. Addison wasn't listening to the words. She was listening to the silence between them, the kind that no longer felt cold. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. And that scared her more than anything. When he stepped out to join her, his tone softened. "They're finalizing the documents," he said. "We'll sign by Friday. The battery project's officially a go." She smiled. "You did it." We looked at her. We did. Her gaze dropped to the city below. "You ever think about what comes after all this?" He tilted his head. "After?" "The emails stop, the press dies down, when the fight isn't what defines you anymore." Justin was quiet for a long moment. "I used to think success would be the reward, the end game. Do you now?" He looked at her, eyes softer than she'd ever seen. "Now I think the real reward is peace." She smiled, just a little. "I'm not used to peace," she whispered. "You'll get used to it," he said gently. "I'll make sure of that." But peace required something else. Honesty. And there was still one truth Addison hadn't shared. Later that night, they sat across from each other on the couch. The TV was on, muted, a movie neither of them were watching. "I need to tell you something," she said. Justin's posture tensed, but he stayed calm. "I right." She took a breath. "A few years ago, back in Chicago, I was engaged." It surprised him. "I didn't know," he said carefully. "It wasn't serious, not in the way it should have been, but he was charming, kind, at first." Justin waited. Then it shifted, slowly. He got possessive, controlling, said my independence made him feel unsafe. I started shrinking just to make him comfortable. Justin's fists curled loosely at his knees. At night, he accused me of cheating, with a coworker I'd barely spoken to. He grabbed my phone, locked me in the apartment, and her voice cracked. I climbed out the window, down the fire escape. Justin's voice was quiet. "Did you press charges?" "I left the city, started over in Boston. I wanted to disappear, to feel invisible, safe." Justin didn't move, didn't speak. He just looked at her, really looked. And then, gently, he said, That's why you flinched that night in St. Martin when I raised my voice." She nodded, ashamed. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." "No," he said, shaking his head. "You don't owe me that apology. I do." She looked at him, startled. He leaned forward, voice raw. "I've spent years barking orders, demanding loyalty, confusing power with control. I thought I had to be that man, but with you," he swallowed. "I don't want to be in charge. I just want to be enough." Her eyes blurred with tears. "You are," she whispered. "You always were. I just didn't believe I could trust that." He reached out and took her hand. "To what it's worth. I'm proud of you." She blinked. For surviving. For walking away. For trusting again. Addison covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to cry. He squeezed her fingers. "You're not invisible anymore." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I don't want to be," she whispered. They spent the next day, quietly, no meetings, no calls. Justin made breakfast. Addison insisted on helping. He insisted on doing the dishes. She let him, even though he loaded the dishwasher completely wrong. They took a walk in Central Park. Nobody recognized him. And for the first time in years, he didn't care. That evening, they visited Pete. His cast was off. "So this is what walking feels like again," he joked, limping slightly. Addison hugged him tight. "Missed you, little brother." "You saw me 3 days ago." "Still." Pete glanced at Justin, then back at his sister. "So, are you two like a thing now?" Addison hesitated. Justin didn't. "We're figuring it out," he said. Pete raised a brow. "Huh, that sounded dangerously like a healthy adult answer." "Don't jinx it," Addison laughed. Pete reached into his backpack. "Well, in that case, I made you both something." He pulled out 2 tiny origami cranes, 1 gold, 1 silver. "My luck," he said. Justin actually smiled. "You've gotten better," he said. "Almost better than me." Pete grinned. "Always was." Later that night, they stood in front of Addison's apartment. She wasn't moving in. Not yet. But Justin had walked her home. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice trembling, "to believe in this." "I know," he said. She looked up at him. "Promise me something?" "Anything. If you ever get lost again, if the business, the power, all of it starts to take over, you'll tell me." Justin nodded. "Olivia," he said, "promise me, if you ever feel like disappearing again, you'll come to me instead." And she smiled. "Deal." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I don't want to lose you again." "You won't? Home?" He kissed her softly, slowly. And when they pulled apart, he whispered, "At this time, we're both choosing each other." Mission 10. The grand gesture and healing finale. It was the first snowfall of the season. New York shimmered beneath a dusting of white, soft, silent, sacred. Addison stood outside the clinic she managed, watching patients file out with scarves wrapped high and heads bowed against the cold. Her breath fogged the glass as she closed the front door and flipped the sign. Closed for the holiday. But inside, her heart felt anything but peaceful. She hadn't seen Justin in over a week. And not since the deal had closed. Not since their quiet night on her doorstep. Not since she'd chosen to give them space, to see if he would still choose her. Without the crisis, without the proximity, without the power plays. Part of her believed he wouldn't. Because no one ever had. Elsewhere in the city, Justin stood in front of a tailor's mirror in a navy suit. It was Christmas Eve. And he had never felt more nervous in his life. Pete adjusted his tie. "I can't believe you're actually doing this." "I can't either," Justin admitted. "But if I let her go again, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Pete stepped back and grinned. "Then what are we waiting for?" Addison's apartment was quiet. She'd made herself a bowl of soup she didn't feel like eating and curled up on the couch with an old blanket. The tree in the corner blinked sleepily with lights she'd strung up the week before. The doorbell rang. She froze. No one ever rang her doorbell without calling first. Slowly, she opened the door. And there he was. Justin Ross. No driver, no entourage, no private jet waiting on the runway. Just a man in a suit, holding a bouquet of white tulips. Her mother's favorite. "You're either very brave," she said softly, "or very stupid." "Probably both," he said. "But I'm hoping you'll hear me out anyway." She stepped aside. He walked in and looked around, taking in the coziness, the clutter, the realness. "You have a nice place," he said. "I like it," she said. He turned to her. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with something deeper. "I came here tonight because I realized something. All my life I've been chasing the next deal, the next number, the next title, and it never filled the empty space inside me." She didn't speak. I stepped closer. "You filled it, without trying, with your quiet, with your fire, with your truth." Her lips parted slightly, but still she said nothing. So he kept going. "I've never met anyone who challenged me, called me out, and still made me want to be better. I used to think love was weakness, but you've shown me it's the bravest thing I could ever feel." Addison's eyes shimmered. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. "I don't expect a yes tonight. I don't expect anything, honestly, except a chance." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, and resting beneath it, folded neatly, was a tiny origami heart. "Pete helped," he said with a sheepish smile. "He said it had to be us." Addison laughed, a watery sound, half joy, half disbelief. "I'm not asking you to marry me now," he said, voice lower. "I'm asking if you believe in this, in us, enough to try again." She looked at him, really looked, past the suit, past the name, past the mistakes, and to the man who'd once gathered golf balls just to afford lunch, and to the man who'd crossed oceans to make amends, and to the man who had, quietly, without asking, made space for her pain and held it without flinching. "I do," she whispered. "I do believe in us." He let out a shaky breath. She stepped forward and touched his face. "You've come a long way, Justin Ross. This'll have you, Addison Burke." They didn't have dinner that night. They danced, slowly, in her living room to a Nat King Cole song humming from the radio. No fancy ballroom. No spotlight. Just two souls finding rhythm in each other. 3 months later, the headlines read, "A strong desire for growth, a rich background in science, a strong sense of history, and a new era of tech with a human heart." And below the fold, CEO Justin Ross engaged to a longtime friend and office manager Addison Burke. Power meets purpose in a love story that's anything but ordinary. The wedding was held in the spring. Not on a yacht, not at a skyscraper, but in the same park where they'd once watched planes skim the water and spoken of homes and simpler things. Katrina was there. So was Annie. So was Pete, walking Addison down the aisle, his limp barely noticeable anymore. And when Justin said, "I do," he didn't look at the crowd or the cameras. He looked at Addison like she was the only thing he'd ever waited for. Because she was. After the ceremony, as guests danced and laughed under lantern-strung trees, Addison slipped away and found Justin standing alone, looking up at the stars. "You okay?" she asked. He turned and smiled. "I've never been better." If you've ever felt like life broke you beyond repair, like the past stole your worth, like no one would ever love you, not the perfect version, but the real one, then let this story remind you. You are not too much, you are not too late, and you are never too broken for love. Sometimes the person you least expect walks in, not to fix you, but to hold your hand as you rebuild yourself. And sometimes, the most powerful love story isn't between two perfect people. It's between two healing hearts who choose each other anyway. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope. Because everyone deserves a second chance. Even you.